Hey, welcome everybody to the Raleigh City Council meeting. We are going to start with the, consent agenda. Do we have any pulled items? I don't believe so.
Move for approval of consent agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second? Councilor Melton has seconded that. All in favor, please raise your hands. It's unanimous, clerk. Okay. Second is public comment. We will start 3 minutes per person. We have 5 people who have signed up. Remember, please, to be respectful and be kind. And we start with Chantel Miles.
Hi, yes. Am I on mute? Okay, I see that I'm not. My name is Chantel Miles, and I live at 3408 Sioux Drive. Thank you for allowing me to speak today to bring to your attention the serious lack of trust that many people in the community feel for this council. This issue has previously been brought to your attention more than once by Mickey Fern, the community engagement consultant you hired. The most obvious reason why citizens mistrust this council is that in February, you voted on a motion to dismantle Raleigh CACs, which had been around for nearly 50 years, and you didn't put this issue on your meeting agenda for the public to see beforehand. I was and continue to be astounded that this council saw fit to make such a huge decision with huge consequences without giving the public the benefit of prior notice. I'm not sure if you all know this, but the sharing of meeting agendas is one of the many ways in which democratic governments show transparency and prove their trustworthiness. Until your decision to circumvent this common practice, I never paid any attention to local politics. Now that I am, good grief, I do not like what I am seeing. I recently brought up the issue of mistrust at Councilor Buffkin's last town hall meeting, but he unfortunately misconstrued my concern to emphatically say that the council did not act in secret to dismantle the CACs and that the decision was made at a public meeting. Please, let me assure you that everyone is well aware that the decision was made at a public meeting. However, the decision-making process leading up to it was deliberately shrouded in secrecy and was a surprise to the community. I would also like to address the fact that Councilor Buffkin refuses to post videos he has recorded of his town hall meetings to social media. Councilor Stewart, you publicly stated that the city is working towards providing an accessible menu of ways citizens can engage with city government. You are also a co-host of Councilor Buffkin's meetings. That is the total of 2 that he has held. Nicole Stewart, are you going to post the recordings? I would like an answer from both you and Councilor Buffkin, and I believe as your constituent, I am entitled to one. Lastly, I want to point out to you, Mayor Baldwin, that I, along with many others, are angry with this council. Until you act as a democratic representative beholden to all of your constituents, including the ones who disagree with you, citizens are not going to speak kindly to you during public comments, nor should they.
Thank you. Chantel, you might want to go back to our work session from today where we had a meeting on community engagement, and that should update you on where we are. Thank you. Next, we have Curtis Johnson.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Curtis Johnson. My address is 1311 Bethel Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27610.
Curtis, we are having a hard time hearing you.
Really? Hold on. Okay, is that better?
Slightly, yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Curtis Johnson. My address is 1311 Belter Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27610. I am the CEO of a 501c3 nonprofit organization named Mighty Men of Valor Outreach, and we fight elderly abuse, hunger, and we help at-risk youth in South Raleigh and surrounding areas in Wake County. And during the pandemic, we've been feeding we fed over 5,000, served over 5,000 meals to senior citizens over at Glenwood Towers and Wake County and the surrounding areas. We also have given out at least 3,500 breakfasts and lunches to youth while school is out during this pandemic. We are actively involved in the community, and we are partnering with a sponsor to provide with us at least 500 turkeys for Thanksgiving to prepare Thanksgiving baskets for seniors and the community. As well, we have a sponsor that's willing to donate a mobile home for a family that was displaced during COVID because the mother lost her job. But we ran out of resources, and we are asking that the council give our organization the same consideration that they gave Passage Home and Triangle Family Services when the pandemic started. And, when I heard it, my heart fell, and I was heartbroken because I know we were doing all we could to provide a community service. And we had partnered with Word of God Fellowship. We had gotten a grant from United Way. They had partnered with us, but our funds were depleting fastly. And there was not even a RFP, a request for proposal, to make the decision. The council and the mayor's office gave those two organizations the $100,000 to help provide services. And I am just asking, as CEO of Mighty Men of Valor, to have that same consideration for our organization so that we can continue our mission and to provide a service in our community. And that's all we're asking. And then should I go ahead with my second agenda that I signed up for, or what, Dennis?
You have run out of time, Curtis. 3 minutes have just expired.
Okay.
So what we'll do is I'm going to ask the city manager just to update us on this request in his report. So thank you.
Okay, but I had signed up twice, so my 3 minutes are supposed to be for both of those requests?
The 3 minutes is for both requests.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
Okay, please feel free to sign up for next 2 weeks from now.
I will, and I'll be getting an email from you with the city managers or what the response to my request.
The city manager will respond to the council.
And who will respond to me?
Staff will.
Okay, thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cox?
I just wanted to point out that the gentleman lost 30 seconds at the beginning because of the technical difficulties. He didn't actually start until 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Councilor Cox. Next, we have Tim Niles.
Tim Niles, 11509 Midlothian Drive. Good afternoon, Mayor Baldwin and Council. One of the first actions taken by this council was to abolish recognition for CACs and their formal role in city government. You took this action claiming CAC participants were not representative of the demographics of Raleigh. They were, you said, mostly older, white homeowners, ignoring the fact that 8 of the 18 were in majority black neighborhoods. You said you wanted to right-size the voices being heard by the city. To that end, you also said you would be intentionally appointing persons to boards, commissions, and task forces with diversity as a goal. You clearly took this approach with both the Human Relations Commission and the Police Advisory Board. In these cases, you held open the application processes until you received the diverse group of applicants you wanted. You went so far as to plead in public for the African American community to submit their names for the Police Advisory Board. You specified seats on these boards to be allocated by race or sexual orientation and the like. But when it comes to the new council study group, you have made no effort for diversity. You set no standards for the seats on this group. When few applicants came in, you made no public pleas to the community. You went ahead with what you received. How many members of the applicant pool are African American, Latino, Asian, Indigenous? How many are renters versus homeowners? You have selected 7 people from this pool to be members of the group. 4 are lawyers, 3 represent District A, 2 are past candidates for City Council, 1 is past president and CEO of the Greater Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, 1 is a real estate agent, 1 currently sits on the Raleigh Housing Authority and is being recommended for the Dix Edge area study. Is this what you consider to be a right sizing of voices to participate in Raleigh government? Even more shocking, 2 of the 7 selections for this group contributed large dollar amounts to your campaign coffers. 1 gave over $25,000 while the other gave $5,000. If the goal of your citizen engagement improvement process is to widen the circle of those engaged, why have you selected an applicant who already serves on the Housing Authority and you have recommended for the Dix Park study, who gave you $25,000 and is an older white homeowner? The average Jane or Joe can't even get an email delivered to members of City Council without it getting trapped by a spam filter and sent to quarantine. But big dollar campaign donors, CEOs, and members of the development community go to the front of the line to help decide if the city should raise your salaries and extend the lengths of your terms in office. This makes a total mockery of your claims of wanting to expand citizen engagement. This is nothing more than pay to play and political cronyism. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Yara Hayter.
Not on the call, Mayor.
Not on the call. Okay. And next, we have Bonner Gaylord.
He is also not on the call.
Okay.
Wait a minute. He is literally just joining right now. Okay. Bonner?
Yes.
It is your 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I had public comment set for 2 p.m., so I apologize. I would, do you all have the presentation that I had sent over? We had sent it, a presentation over for a presentation to put up on the screen.
I do not think we have a presentation.
Okay. All right. Well, is there a way I could share that, or is that possible?
Okay, Bonner, you have 2.5 minutes left.
Okay.
So I would.
I'll just, so a little bit about what we'd like to propose today. We entered into discussions with Steve Malik about downtown South Stadium and a entertainment and sports venue. And that led us to a lot of questions about how a district could create incredible opportunity for our community. And we pursued a robust citizen engagement process in order to identify the potential community benefits that could come out of this development. And commissioned ULI to do a study with over 100 people, stakeholders in the community, have had multiple town hall sessions listening to the neighborhood, have had our neighborhood meetings, have done online surveys, have done separate group and individual meetings for the past 1.5 years, and has really risen up an array of community benefits that we believe can be accomplished through this development. And those benefits are affordable housing and minority and women business participation and education partnerships with include workforce development, art and public cultural amenities and greenways and transit infrastructure. And so as we've pursued and learned about all those benefits the community is desirous of, we learned that the city's equitable development around transit handbook draft currently states that an equity fund is the right way to accomplish the community benefits that the community needs around the planned BRT stop in downtown South. And so we would like to begin discussions with the city and the city staff about how to accomplish that equity fund and how do we deliver community benefits to the community through that equity fund. And the specific instrument that's referenced in the Equitable Development Around Transit Handbook is an instrument called a TIG, a tax increment grant. And so we have an MOU that we have submitted to you all for review and discussion of how we can come to an understanding to flesh out this idea and help the community
Bonner,
discern.
your time has run out.
Okay.
Thank you for being here today. We moved public comment from 2 o'clock until right after the consent agenda, just for future reference.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Old habits die hard, I guess.
All right. Thank you. I think what Bonner was bringing forward was a proposal to have staff look at a community benefits agreement as part of a TIG grant. And this has been discussed numerous times before, but I guess this is a formal request to do so. What I'd like to get from staff is I'd like for them to take a look at this proposal. I know we've never done a TIG grant before. City of Charlotte has done many of them. I would like for staff to take a look at the proposal. I would like for them to take a look at a timeline and a strategy related to the rezoning, this proposal, community engagement, and how we might build a TIG grant into this before, we need more information before we can make any decisions. I'd like to ask you to bring that back in 2 weeks, but I also like to see you look at how we could assemble a community engagement group around this, using a ballot system like we have in the past, and setting aside different categories of representation, and then have a ballot process and a nomination process as part of this. So I think for us to respond, we need staff to better inform us on what a timeline might look like and what the process might look like, but also how could we build a robust community engagement process into this. So if everybody is in agreement with that, I'm going to ask staff to come back to us in 2 weeks under special items. Councillor Cox?
I'm generally in agreement with this. However, I have some concerns that I've been tending to bring up during council concerns. And so I will agree to this, but I want to note that I have some caveats and I'll bring them up during council concerns.
Is everyone else okay? Can show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. So staff, if you could follow up with this, and over the next 2 weeks, come back to us at the next meeting under special items with a timeline, strategy, and information on how we could proceed with the community engagement process. Okay? All right. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ken Bowers with Planning and Development. So we'll start by reviewing the items that are currently calendared for the public hearing on Wednesday, November 4th. And you can see there is there is a large number of them, including at present 4 zoning cases, 1 text change, and 4 street closings.
I'm sorry, we can't see, but we can't see. All we see is a gray screen.
Okay. We'll wait to resolve those technical difficulties then. Are we fixed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Ignore that last slide. So there are 5 items being reported out by the Planning Commission with recommendations to approve. And at Council's discretion, we have recommended the November 4th public hearing date as the next available evening public hearing, but any one of them could be scheduled probably as late as January, but in December, and still meet the requirement that they be noticed, the public hearing be noticed within 60 days of you receiving this report today. So let's go through these one by one. The first one is Z420. This is 1701 Trailwood Drive. This case had been pending at Planning Commission for some time. Was originally a request for RX. Has now been modified to a general use case request for R10. Current zoning is a mix of R4 and R6. The Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously.
So I have a question, Ken. Can we send this back to the Planning Commission? My understanding is this particular item, there were people waiting to speak in opposition. And I don't know exactly how it all came about, but they never got that opportunity to share their concerns. And I think that the Planning Commission made a decision without hearing from them. So can we send this back and ask Planning Commission to re-look at this with comment from the public and then have it brought back to us?
You can. The main requirement is you've received the report, and a public hearing has to be noticed within 60 days of receiving the report. I don't believe that the UDO hasn't contemplated this particular course of action, that it's specific to what would happen if it went back and you received a second report. But I think to be on the safe side, we should try to ensure that a public hearing does occur at the public hearing date in January, because that would meet the time frame if the 60-day clock started ticking today. But that obviously provides time for it to go back to the Planning Commission, get some additional public comment, and come back to you potentially in November or December.
Okay, so we would set the date then for January, our first meeting in January, to fulfill UDO
Actually,
targets.
we're recommending not setting the hearing until you get the second report.
Okay, but we will have time to do that.
Yes.
Councilor Fort, this is, I know that there have been people in contact with both of us on this particular issue. Are you good with that?
Yes, I'm in agreement with that. Send it back to the Planning Commission.
Okay. All right, Ken, so what we'll do then is please make sure that they know that we have this timeline we need to reach.
Okay, we will. We'll try to aim for their first meeting in November, so it could come back to you at your second meeting in November.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next item is 6125 Buffalo Road, request to rezone about 10.5 acres from R4 and manufactured housing to R10 conditional use. Planning Commission recommended approval on a split vote 7-3. Primary concerns raised at the Planning Commission had to do with traffic on Buffalo Road, and the lack of a definitive timeline as to when improvements might be made to Buffalo Road to handle increased volume. So there's an additional recommendation to the City Council to consider future prioritization of improvements to Buffalo Road as a future capital project. That concludes my report on that item.
Okay. Do we want to take, Counselor Cox?
Is there a Buffalo Road Street project?
There is not a funded Buffalo Street project at this time, nor is there a design. There's a recognition that improvements to Buffalo Road are needed to cope with both present and future traffic volume.
Okay, so we have a infrastructure sufficiency problem then?
There is believed to be a infrastructure sufficiency problem, which is projected to get worse over time.
Okay, all right.
So can we set the public hearing for November 4th? I can't see people, so I don't.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, hold on one second. I need to see who's in favor. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Next, Ken.
Okay. Greenback. Next item is at 5329 Departure Drive. This is south of the intersection with Spring Forest Road, located in near Atlantic Springs Road. The request is to rezone about 6 acres from IX3 parking limited to RX5, being consistent with the future land use map and the comp plan. Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval. And that concludes my report on that item.
Okay. Can we set this for public hearing November 4th? Someone like to make a motion? Councilor Cox has made a motion. Council Melton has seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That passes unanimously, clerk. The next item is rezoning Z19 Fox Road.
Yes, this item located at the intersection of Fox Road and US 401 Lewisburg Road. Request to rezone, I believe, approximately 3 acres from RX3 parking limited or parkway with conditional use to NX4 conditional use. Planning Commission has recommended approval on a 10-0 vote. Signed zoning conditions have been received, and again, a public hearing of November 4th has been recommended. That concludes my report on this item.
Okay.
I have a comment about this one.
Okay, Councilor Cox.
Yeah, I have concerns about this one because it is removing the parkway frontage requirement. And I was wondering if there was any discussion at the Planning Commission about that.
There was some discussion, and there are conditions that address to some extent the frontage, but they're different from parkway.
Yeah, they're very different from parkway. I'll make a motion to move ahead with this, but I'm not really in support of this without the parkway condition.
Okay, second by Councilor Fort. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that hearing will be the 4th. Next is text change 1220, historic subdivisions.
Yes, you may recall this is a text change that is simply intended to shift final approval authority of subdivisions within historic overlay districts from the and impacting historic landmarks from the City Council to the Historic Development Commission. Planning Commission has recommended approval unanimously, and we're also recommending a November 4th public hearing, and that concludes my report on this item.
Okay, that would also be November 4th. Would someone like to make a motion to approve that? Councilor Melton? Do I have a second? Okay, Councilor Stewart, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Right,
Okay,
next we have
thank you.
Oh,
That
sorry.
concludes the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Next, we have special items. Our first topic is potential delegation of quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings.
Hi, Mayor. I will start that out quickly, then defer to Councilmember Knight, and then we can go into our presentation. Council will remember during the last meeting that Councilmember Knight had addressed the issue as to whether that the quasi-judicial hearings currently delegated to council might be more appropriately delegated to the Board of Adjustment or some other board. The Board of Adjustment does do only quasi-judicial hearings, whereas the council does mainly legislative and only occasionally judicial hearings. I did a brief overview at the last meeting. We prepared a more detailed presentation, and I can get to that. But before I start, I thought I would let Councilmember Knight chime in to anything he might want to allow first, since this came from his, this is his request.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Tatum. So I've asked for this issue to be brought back before council because I think it is an issue, a procedural issue that needs to be corrected by council. This is an issue concerning good governance process and procedure. I came to this issue very innocently at around midnight a couple of meetings ago when I was trying to not only pay attention but stay awake, as I think a lot of you were too that night during a quasi-judicial hearing around midnight. The hearing felt odd to me, right? It felt awkward and it felt a bit uncomfortable, and not just because of the time of the night. And so I looked into our governance structure around these processes and around this legislative body, which is really what we are, taking on the role of the judiciary, really both judge and jury. And I have found that there are many instances where this council may have to remove our legislative hat and take on that of a judiciary body. And I don't think that is the best way to govern for a city council. And so I will let Ms. Tatum go through the presentation. I'm glad to make this today only informational. I know it is complicated issues we're dealing with, very legalistic, but I think it's worth the council hearing this presentation from our expert and then having conversation about it. Thank you.
Okay. Is Ken is actually prepared this along with me, so maybe he can chime in as needed. Can we get the PowerPoint up? Oh, there he is.
I'm back.
Okay, so I guess I'll just go to the next slide. And I don't know why this isn't in color, but I'm sure it has the same content that was in the backup. Again, this is what we just talked about. Had suggested at the last meeting that these cases be transferred. And what this presentation is intended to do is to outline what the law is, what the UDO says, and what council's options are. Next slide. Okay, what I wanted to do is start with a high-level overview about the types of land use decisions that local governments, and this is, again, high level. First of all, there's a legislative decision, which is a policy-making decision that you do at most meetings, the adoption of ordinances and resolutions. These are made by the city council. The second type of land use decisions are quasi-judicial decisions, which require an evidentiary hearing where you apply evidence to subjective as opposed to objective ordinance standards. And under the statutes, these must be made by quasi-judicial boards and not staff. Have these made by the quasi-judicial boards. Third is an decision, which are the day-to-day decisions that your zoning and DS staff and other staff members make every day as they interpret the UDO. Decisions that are made by staff and are objective. Now, the last type is an advisory decision, which are ones made by boards like the Planning Commission, and these are intended to advise the council generally as how to make a legislative decision. Now, what we're going to talk about today is mainly quasi-judicial and how they relate to the legislative decisions that you make. So the next slide. Again, a legislative decision is the ones that you make generally at almost every meeting. State law and the city charter charge you with making these decisions. Nobody else can make legislative decisions. Some of those decisions do require public hearings, not all of them. Your zoning hearings, your street closing hearings do statutorily require public hearings, although council can have a lot of leeway on how much time you give the various sides. You can also talk about the case outside of the hearing. For rezoning cases, you know how the applicants or their attorneys or neighbors will call you, email you. That is perfectly acceptable. You can base your decisions on what they tell you outside of the hearing, and you can freely talk about it. You also have a lot of discretion in making legislative decisions. They're very difficult to overturn. Generally, when they are overturned, it's usually on a procedural matter and not on a substantive. So next slide. Okay, in contrast to a legislative decision, quasi-judicial decisions, again, require an evidentiary hearing, which is defined by the statutes as one where you're gathering competent material and substantial evidence to make findings for a quasi-judicial decision. Each one of those terms is a term of art: competent material and substantial, that on appeal a court will look at to make sure you've checked the boxes on each of those from an evidentiary burden perspective. What the decision-making board does is take a subjective standard and come to a decision, sort of like a judge, the lawyers on the council in a bench trial, sort of similar to that. Those are appealable to Superior Court on the record by writ of certiorari. Now, the next slide is the question of who decides which boards make quasi-judicial decisions. And as we talked about earlier, only a decision-making board can do this. Staff cannot. Now, there are different assigned these, which are the governing board, planning board, board, et cetera. And under the statutes, most of these are currently delegated to the Board of Adjustment. The City Council drafts the UDO and the local ordinances, and the statutes have said that they can delegate itself or the Planning Commission or some other technical boards to perform any of the duties of the Board of Adjustment. So under the statutes, you start with the premise that that's the general quasi-judicial board, but the council can then decide that it pulls some or all or whatever the case is to some other board. The exception is the RHDC, and that is a role that the council cannot assume. Next slide. Now then, the next question is, once you say, we're going to take some of these hearings or decisions away from the Board of Adjustment and assign them to someone else or some other board, what are the rules that apply? And basically what the statutes say is if you move it to another board, that board essentially sits as a Board of Adjustment and uses the exact same procedures and processes as if the Board of Adjustment body hearing the case. Okay, next slide. I'm going to do high level here. There are a lot of specific procedures, but what are the ones that are different, if you will, or that you need to follow that you wouldn't follow in a legislative hearing? One is a requirement that due process elements be followed. That means you swear witnesses, allow cross-examinations. Decisions are made based on the evidence in the hearing and not things that happen outside the hearing. And hence there's the rule that quasi-judicial board members cannot engage in ex parte discussions about the case with anyone outside of the hearing, including each other. That means, unlike your legislative hearing where you're meeting with applicants and neighbors, you're not allowed to do that in a quasi-judicial hearing. Or anything that you find out about the case that might influence your decision, technically you're supposed to sort of block that off and only consider what you hear in the hearing. There's also certain topics that require expert testimony. Two of those are traffic, safety, and property values. It's basically anything that would require an expert in a civil trial. And so what that means is if you have an expert traffic engineer that speaks to the traffic, that if there is not a competing expert, then technically you would take that as your competent evidence, and other people who were not qualified as an expert, even though if they had evidence about the traffic, firsthand knowledge, even yourselves, that shouldn't be considered. Again, there is discretion in a legislative case, and really not as where you have standards, you're still stuck with the evidence that you're presented at the hearing. Okay, next slide. Okay, what does the UDO do with quasi-judicial decisions? What I just said was that the council can pick which boards do what. You started with the premise that certain one goes to RHDC, everything goes to the Board of Adjustment, you can pull them back. What it does in the UDO is the Board of Adjustment hears variances and administrative appeals, except those that are delegated to council, and the Board of Adjustment hears all special use permits. That's a change from the old zoning code where they used to be split between the council and the Board of Adjustment. The RHDC hears certificates of appropriateness in historic overlay district. And a new thing that has just come that council approved recently is the Appearance Commission actually hears UDO alternates, which have to do, which are a type of variance with a sort of a different standard. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what right now does the UDO say that the council hears? And there are 4 types of variances, and those are those that arise under Article 9.2 through 9.5, stormwater, floodplain, sedimentation, erosion control, and watershed. The UDO also delegates administrative appeals from decisions under those same sections to the council. Subdivisions in historic overlays and the Metro Park overlay are delegated to council, and there's something called a site plan requesting statutory vested rights. There is a new statute that was enacted last year that probably has made this unnecessary, and the city's never actually had a case, but we can talk about that later because we have some UDO amendments coming through about vested rights that will encompass this. So next slide. Now before, I did want to raise a couple of points that are unique to each one of these decisions. In variance decisions, the applicant has to prove what is called an unnecessary hardship. And again, by that same term, competent material and substantial evidence. And there are 4 statutory standards, and they're also in the UDO, and all 4 of those are discretionary and are set by statute. Another point to note is that any variance requires a 4/5 vote of the members of the decision-making board. That's 4 of 5 of the Board of Adjustment and 7 of 8 of the council members. Next slide. Now, with administrative appeals, just wanted to make sure you know what those are. Basically, as staff members make day-to-day calls on all different aspects of the UDO, maybe on a site plan or a subdivision, or whether a use is permitted or not permitted, anyone can appeal the decision of the interpretation of a UDO term to the Board of Adjustment or some other quasi-judicial board to which that's delegated. So that's what that is. That is an appeal of a staff objective decision, how they're interpreting what they believe that objective decision means under the UDO. Now, that only requires a majority vote and not the 4/5 of a variance. I did want to note that any person with standing can appeal one of these decisions, and the courts have been quite clear as do the statutes, that includes the city council. So one thing that we wanted to note is that if the city council retains quasi-judicial review power over these administrative decisions, that you may want to have a caveat that if the council is the applicant or the appellant, that those cases may want to be heard for the Board of Adjustment because you couldn't appeal something to yourself. The other point I did want to thought about after I did the PowerPoint The city can also request a variance. We've done that on several occasions recently, not necessarily in these districts, but again, that may be something we want to note. If council retains the variance power, that if the city itself ever requested a variance, that we would have a board to go to other than the council. Okay, the next point, next slide, has to do, so that's variances and administrative appeals. So now we go to quasi-judicial subdivision decisions. The statutes speak specifically to both site plans and subdivisions, and they allow the council to pick whether they want these decisions to be quasi-judicial or administrative. Now, the way that selection is made is not just saying it's quasi-judicial or administrative, but you look at the standard for decision to find out in what box you put it in. So basically, if the decision is objective, it's a staff decision and it's administrative. If there is also a standard which requires a discretionary decision and findings, then it becomes quasi-judicial. Again, that's a council call. Next slide. The two that are delegated to council right now under the UDO, they're designated quasi-judicial. However, there are no discretionary standards. So that's sort of something, I guess, that was missed when these things were delegated to council. So under state law, if these remain quasi-judicial, then quasi-judicial standards are required. Otherwise, it becomes an objective staff decision. Next slide. Now, in the historic overlay district, you just authorized a public hearing on moving these to the RHDC. Now, that text amendment does do a couple of things. It moves these to the RHDC, and it also adds that objective standard. The one that appears in this text amendment is a congruity standard, and that's the same standard that the RHDC applies every month as it meets, as people ask to do external alterations or new buildings in historic districts. Basically, they look and see, does it fit the character of the district? And that's sort of what they're used to doing. And so if that is done now in a subdivision, basically, they will look at the lots to be created and make sure essentially that those lots can be built upon in a way that fits in the historic overlay district. And again, that's under consideration right now. Next slide. Now, this is the Metro Park overlay, and I don't know much about the Metro Park overlay, and Ken's at the ready to tell you all about it. And I guess maybe Ken, do you just want to go over that and I'll let you explain that? Before you start, I will say that we don't have objective standards here yet, so I'll come back to that.
Sure. So Metro Park Overlay District is designed to protect metro parks, and there's one metro park in the city of Raleigh, which is Umstead Park, from adverse impacts from development around its perimeter. And so it's an overlay district that lies over top of a number of different zoning districts, from fairly low density residential districts to some of our more intense mixed use districts. And the first key point is it doesn't alter the permitted uses. Any use that's permitted in the base district is also permitted in the Metro Park Overlay District. But it does modify some of the standards for how those uses can be developed and operated. So one of the impacts it tries to get at is odors. It has prohibition on certain odor-producing things within a distance of the park. Noise is another one. Outdoor speakers within 500 feet, and then also a lot of them are oriented towards things that might drain into the park and harm the waterways in the park. So there are standards within it that deal with drainage courses and buffering along those drainage courses, prohibition on above-ground storage of any hazardous waste and materials. There's some limitations on building height, which is related to view sheds, and also some limitations on lighting so that bright lights are not illuminating the park, which of course is full of wildlife that might be disturbed by adverse lighting impacts. Now, The thing about this, though, is that while all these standards are protective of the park, none of them have anything to do with the subdivision of land. And it's not entirely clear to staff what the purpose of the original intent of the quasi-judicial review of subdivision standards within the Metro Park Overlay District was. From the standpoint of things like the 32-foot tree conservation area, that would be a factor in the administrative review of a subdivision application around the park, because obviously we wouldn't have raised issues with a subdivision that created a lot that could, for some reason, not comply with that while still leaving reasonable buildable area. But there is nothing in the standards or the purpose of the district that suggests that there's a need for a special oversight or what the standards or findings would be if there was a quasi-judicial approval process for subdivisions within the overlay district. And that's all I have to add on that at this time.
Okay, next slide. Can we have the next slide? Oh, there. I was muting and unmuting myself. I couldn't figure out which one I was on. Okay, so right now we have the same issue that we had with the historic subdivisions that we are, if the text amendment is passed, will remedy by the congruity standards, which there's nothing quasi-judicial to decide. So going forward, if council wants to retain quasi-judicial authority over this, we would suggest that a quasi-judicial standard be added. Otherwise, you don't have any discretion and you're just checking a box the same as staff. So that's really a staff thing to do. And if there is this quasi-judicial standard added, the question is then, what is it that council wants the applicant to them in order to subdivide? What is the standard that you would like to them to come to you and prove? And historic overlay, it's congruity that you fit in. So we don't really, as Ken said, we haven't given any real thought to what that should be. We can with council direction. I've added some examples here that are quasi-judicial standards for land use decisions, special use permits or whatever, that some are included in some ordinances. For example, the applicant must show they protect public health and safety. Maybe you protect Olmsted Park, don't negatively impact the value of properties, they're in harmony with the area, don't cause traffic. Those are examples of quasi-subjective standards that that move that decision over to the quasi-judicial arena, if you will. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is Ken and I just brainstorming and about pros and cons when a legislative body is making quasi-judicial decisions. And the advantage, of course, is that if council wants the authority to hear and make decisions on certain cases that it has a particular interest in, then they would pull those over to their own decision-making box. Now, excuse me, as far as cons go, then these are not cons. Generally, they're cons if you're comparing to what you can do legislatively versus quasi-judicially. And we've already talked about these, but real quick, you can't talk with others outside of the hearing. You have to follow the evidentiary rules. You have to listen to experts as opposed to about certain topics. You've got to base the decision on the evidence as opposed to neighbors' support or opposition. That's different in a legislative hearing. If you have a rezoning hearing and a lot of neighbors are opposed, you can freely legally deny the rezoning. In a quasi-judicial case, it's all based on the evidence, and if there is nothing competent or material, it doesn't really matter whether people want it or not. The next thing is that the public may not understand the procedures. So if they call you on the phone and they want to talk about the case, and you have to say, I can't talk about it, sometimes that's hard to explain. And lastly, that unlike a legislative hearing where you have your 8 minutes and the council has authority to limit times, technically in a quasi-judicial setting, you generally ask people not to be repetitive, but time limits are prohibited. And we haven't had long cases, but there are, if you have contested cases, that they can sometimes take quite a bit of time. Next slide. Now, this is just a quick overview of options. I've actually already said all this probably, but we'll sort of wrap it all up. You can leave the UDO as it is. You can say, we still want to hear these quasi-judicial cases with the 2 caveats. One, you've got the historic overlay already in a text amendment. And second, if the method remains quasi-judicial, we do not need to add a standard. The second option is that you can keep some, you can move them all, or you can keep some and move some. And those have to do with the variances, administrative appeals, and the subdivisions. So again, you have the authority to pick and choose. So it may be that you say, well, I want to keep some, not keep others. And then the last is what I've said enough, that if with the Metro Park subdivision, we're going to have to adjust the standard if it stays with council. So I know that was a lot of law and a lot of information, but make sure that everybody sort of knew what we were dealing with to the extent that we could explain sort of legally what your options are and what the law is. So having said that, I'm glad to answer questions, or Ken can answer them just as well as I can. Mayor, are you calling on Mr. Cox, or?
I'm asking you to take down the presentation so I can see people. Okay, Councillor Cox, and then Councillor Melton. You're muted, Councillor Cox.
Sorry. The Metro Park subdivision, if that does not remain quasi-judicial, how are decisions then made?
They would be made the same as any other subdivisions are made. With the UDO, and Ken, you can jump in here. Subdivisions were all moved to and site plans to an administrative process. So right now, staff makes those calls on, lot size, things that they can determine without the exercise of discretion. Right now, the UDO doesn't have a discretionary standard. So if you keep it, the point is you would add that standard and say to the applicant, basically, you've got to meet the same thing everybody else does, but we're adding an additional quasi-judicial standard because we want you to prove these additional things for this particular subdivision, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Ken, you want to chime in?
Councillor Melton was next. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken, did you have any additional?
I have nothing to add to Robin's description. I thought that completely answered the question.
Okay. Councillor Melton?
No, this was really thorough, very informative. I felt like I was back in law school. I thought the city attorney was then going to start randomly calling on us to answer questions after the presentation. But I initially had some concerns about making these changes, but after the presentation, I feel better about it, and I feel like it's the right thing to do. So I just want to say that I'm supportive of this measure, and I would support option 3.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Robin, I just have one question that I didn't see answered anywhere in the presentation, and I'm sorry if I missed it. But I'm curious how other cities our size handle these cases. Would we be taking a precedented move or unprecedented move if we were to move forward today?
In my experience, I don't know of any councils that do variances and administrative appeals. Those are historically been a Board of Adjustment decision. The only time that I have seen it over the many years, I'm younger than Gail, but that's about it, is a long time ago, there are some very small cities or towns where they just don't have enough people to staff different boards. And so the council or the board of commissioners might sit as a board of adjustment, but those are historically board of adjustment things. So I have not seen it, rarely if ever. Now, special use permits are a different matter. Under the statutes, special use permits have always said it can be council or the board of adjustment. And so, you know, places do delegate those, and special use permits are decisions about whether a use can be located somewhere and makes the person, and Marion, you probably remember in the old days when council used to hear these for certain uses that you would have to come to council and maybe cell towers and
oh yes,
that type of thing. So those are it's pretty common, but what the UDO did is it took all those and gave those back to the Board of Adjustment. And for some reason, I don't know why I had put these, so I probably made that too complicated, but it's not common for these types of quasi-judicial decisions at all to be heard by councils. Special use permits is more common, although that they're getting away from it, but we don't, that's not in front of you.
Okay, Councilor Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I want to share 2 points of perspective, both that move me in the direction of delegating more quasi-judicial decisions to boards rather than the council. First, from my professional life, I am an attorney for an administrative board of the state that was established for some of the very same reasons that Robin was discussing, that basically bodies that are made up of elected officials are often found in very difficult positions with these decisions. And all over state government, we have boards and commissions that are established and operate under the exact same evidentiary standard that Robin was just discussing, competent material, substantial evidence. And they use the same kinds of procedures, due process protection, swearing in witnesses, no ex parte communications, etc. For, like I said, the very same reasons that Robin was just discussing. And these decisions, you can see the very obvious conflicts that arise for elected officials faced with making unpopular decisions that nonetheless serve the long-term public interest. For example, allowing the siting of power plants, landfills, quarries, raising electric rates, raising water rates, it's on down the line. So from a good government standpoint and a well-ordered regulatory system, I think there's a lot of merit in having a body made up not of elected that carry out these decisions. And then the second point of perspective, during my short time on council, I have been confronted with a constituent who lives in a subdivision that had been subdivided, and he now finds himself the owner of a lot that he cannot build a house with a driveway on because of the limits of impervious surface in the floodplain. And I've had a very difficult time explaining to him why his representative on council cannot help him. And I find myself in the impossible position of either advocating on his behalf and not being able to participate in the council decision, or not advocating on his behalf, essentially failing him as his representative and participating in the decision, or violating the requirements and protections that are set up within the process, which of course I'm not willing to do that. So, you know, these decisions really need to be made, in my opinion, by a board that's not made up of elected officials. And it certainly would help unburden the council from what can be lengthy and complicated hearings, and it would help promote harmony between us, the council members, and the folks we represent. So I'm in favor of moving in that direction. And thank you, staff, for being here today to help us consider this decision.
Councillor Cox.
I think there's something to be said for the old saying that the buck stops here. And I do think that even though these are quasi-judicial and we're bound to consider evidence and so forth, there is judgment involved. and I think that judgment should be exercised by City Council. That's why we got elected. And furthermore, if we sit in these cases and we become aware of these kinds of issues that Mr. Buffkin presents, then we as a legislative body can take action legislatively in the future to make corrections. If we send all of these items off to some other committee or commission, then often we don't have visibility into what's going on. And so I would be in favor of keeping this decision-making with the City Council.
Councilor Fort.
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Cox. I do think that as the elected representatives, we do have a responsibility for some oversight and, you know, for me particularly, the stormwater issues and concerns that are becoming a major problem in the city. So I would agree with Councilor Cox.
Councilor Stewart.
I want to say that I hear what Councilmember Cox and Councilmember Ford are saying. And that's why I asked my question about what do other cities our size or really any other cities do. We are in a very unique spot where we're actually acting more like a tiny town or a really small city than the second largest city in North Carolina. And so I think it's our responsibility to move forward with this. I hear you, but I don't share those same concerns. And I think for me, they've been addressed. So I'm ready for, I know there's a couple of folks who might want to make a motion, so I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Councilor Branch.
So I've been sitting here and going back and forth because, as I stated the previous meeting, I do believe we should be the ones making the decisions, but I also understand that we're setting legislative decisions and then we're coming back and we are the jury on those decisions, where I can understand where there may be some conflict. But Councilman Cox brought something up that I have a question for staff. It was about, he said, you know, if we have cases that are going to these boards, if that is to what happens today, how do we ensure that we have the information in order to see if we have a problem, because we have so many cases that seem to be rapid. A great example is we ran into this with some cases that kept going to BOA, and you know we had to make some changes some years ago. So where's that communication and information gathering data so council can be aware of potential issues?
You're muted, Ken.
Okay, sorry about that. First, I'll start by saying that the quasi-judicial decisions that we're talking about today that still rest with council are a very, very small fraction of the many, many quasi-judicial decisions that the various boards and commissions hear every month, and cumulatively hundreds of them throughout the year. So that's a lot of information to track, and I believe in terms of reporting back on any sort of troubling trends with that, that's really a role for staff to bring back issues to the council if we are seeing certain types of decisions that we think are either adverse to the public interest or showing that there's an issue with the code and that multiple people are having to apply for relief, or maybe they shouldn't have to do that. And of course, that is something that we do today, because many of the text changes that you've heard in the past few years have had their origin in noticing trends at the Board of Adjustment for what types of variances people are requesting and whether or not they should have to be asking for those variances. There's also been in the past some text changes that happened when the council felt that the board was granting variances for code sections that they thought it was inappropriate. So this has worked both ways. I believe it's really a staff level function to keep the council, regardless of what happens with this particular item, because again, this is a very small fraction of all the quasi-judicial decisions that are made by appointed boards and commissions by the city, that there needs to be some regular reporting back on what trends the staff is seeing in that.
Councilor Melton?
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing, and then I'll state request. In a quasi-judicial case, was legally obligated to grant an application if there is evidence to support it, even though there may be significant opposition and the council member may be opposed to the proposed project. And I think that that's sort of the key, because we're being asked under the current rules to be elected officials and also judges. And I can think of a case we had, the most recent one that Councilmember Knight was talking about at midnight, where I felt that there were several members of this board that wanted to vote against the project but had to vote for it because the evidence was presented to check all the boxes. And so I think we're being asked to be both elected officials legislatively and judges, and that feels procedurally wrong to me. And so I don't think there's judgment in these cases, and that's sort of the issue that's putting us in a tough spot. Is they are judicial cases. If there's evidence presented, we have to vote for it, even if you personally feel against it or your constituents are against it. And I think allocating that authority to the appropriate boards and commissions, and then it's appealed to a court of law in Wake County, it cuts us out of that process. And it sounds like that's what other cities do as well. So I'm in favor of this change.
Okay, I am going to ask if there's a motion. Councilor Knight?
Yes, Madam Mayor. If the time is right, then I will make a motion for procedural consistency. And Ms. Tatum, if you'll help me get this motion correct, I would move that the City Council support option number 3. And should I read that option, Ms. Tatum?
You're on mute, Robin.
Sorry, I think that's sort of collective. I believe the motion that you're talking about would be to move all current quasi-judicial council decisions to the Board of Adjustment or other appropriate decision makers. And then the question is, do you want to, and what you want to do with Metro Park, which I think that option would, option number 3 would that objective and leave that with staff instead of adding a quasi-judicial. So the motion would be.
So number 3 is the option that I would like to move for the council to take.
Okay.
Do we have a second? Councilor Buffkin? All in favor, please raise your hands. Who's opposed? Okay, clerk, that is a 5-3 vote with Councilmember Cox, Fort, and Branch in opposition. Okay.
So just to clarify, that would mean that text amendments would be drafted, and then I guess my question is the instruction to go straight to the Planning Commission, or would you want to report back before that happens?
I would say we've given you direction.
Got it.
Okay. All right, next is the Social Services Inventory Report. This is for information purposes only. There will be no vote.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. Toy Benningay with Budget and Management Services. Today we have a short presentation on the social services inventory requested by City Council at the September 1st City Council meeting. We wanted to share our methodology for collecting this information, briefly discuss how state law shapes service provision, and provide some examples included in the report. Cities and counties provide services that impact the daily lives of residents. These services can be categorized in numerous ways. For this report, we broadly defined a social service as a service intended to improve the well-being of individuals, families, and the overall community. Examples include health, education, workforce development, and food security. To collect this data, we requested information from city departments on programs which fit this definition, including a brief description and some information on funding levels. To collect this information on Wake County programs, we utilized available information from Wake County's website and budget documents. Based on this collection method, our inventory may not be exhaustive or as granular for county-provided services. We have shared this report with the county to assist in verifying all major service areas are covered within the report. The report has two sections. The first section covers programs provided by Wake County, and the second section covers City of Raleigh programs. On the slide is an example of how a program is defined with a brief description. We utilize service tags to assist the reader and help categorize service areas. This self-selected categorization tool may not fully represent all the aspects of a specific program. The first few pages of the report outline how state law structures service provision among counties and cities. When created, counties were formed to carry out service provision on behalf of the state. The state determined certain services that all residents of North Carolina should receive regardless of where they lived. Examples include public health, education, and broadly defined social services. Cities received responsibility to provide services for built communities. Examples include streets, street lighting, and sidewalks. In North Carolina, the General Assembly must empower local governments to provide a service. As boundaries between cities and counties began to blur, so did the distinction between service provision. This chart, taken from the UNC School of Government, highlights services authorized only to counties and only to cities. The middle section of the chart illustrates services that are authorized for both cities and counties. This middle section is why some counties and cities can and do provide similar types of services. I will point out, North Carolina has a federally mandated, state-supervised, and county-administered social services system. So any federally mandated program, funding will be distributed by the state to the county governments for implementation. For this report, we attempted to include areas where the city and county are providing types of social services. This report is not intended as a comparison, but as a highlight of the different services and programs offered. I have 5 examples of service areas and the type of programs offered by the city and the county. For housing, Raleigh contributes $6.2 million in general fund support each year for affordable housing development. The Housing and Neighborhoods Department also runs down payment assistance programs, rehab programs, and provides direct support to outside agencies through CDBG and local funding. Examples of different programs are included on the slide. For youth, Wake County funds $527 million for the annual operating budget for the Wake County Public School System and administers the Smart Start program. Raleigh provides supplemental education support through after-school programming and summer camps. Housing and Neighborhoods also operates the Pathways Center, which provides many valuable programs and opportunities. In addition, the city provides direct assistance to agencies through various grant processes. To support active adults, the city offers programming at the 5 Point Center for Active Adults and provides direct support to outside agencies. Housing and Neighborhoods also manages the Foster Grandparent Program. Other examples of programs that are provided by Raleigh and Wake County are shown on the slide. To improve food security, Wake County administers the Food and Nutrition Services Program, which includes supplemental and nutrition assistance benefits. In total, the Wake County Department of Human Services funds $54 million to improve economic self-sufficiency. The City of Raleigh provides feeding programs to youth through the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department, including the Backpack Buddies program and summer food service. Other examples of programs are included on the slide. Workforce development initiatives are often coordinated on a regional basis through the Capital Area Workforce Development Board. The City of Raleigh also has annual grant programs totaling over $600,000 for building upfits and the Impact Partner Program. Additional support is provided directly to outside agencies through various grant processes. The final report, which is attached to this agenda item, is high level and strives to provide an overview of the different roles and responsibilities, as well as different programs provided by Wake County and the City of Raleigh. Are there any questions I can assist in addressing?
No, I'm muted. Do we have any questions from any of the council members? Councilor Melton, you had asked that this come forward. Do you have any questions or concerns?
No, I requested this work session really for informational purposes for us and for the public, because I think there are resources that the city is doing, things the county are doing that maybe we're not aware of, the public may not be aware of. And so it's good for on background informational purposes going in tail end of this year into next year, and we start the next year budget cycle relatively soon, to understand where we're allocating funds and services to help our community with food and shelter and other resources, workforce development. And it may be something to be keeping in mind as we're looking at where we want to be investing funds and resources in the future. So I just wanted, it's come up a lot in community meetings I've had this summer, and so I wanted to receive the information. And then one, I think we can better promote our services and the county services to our constituents, and two, it's something to think about as we look at moving forward how we're allocating funds.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, next we're on to the report and recommendation of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. 4 items on the city manager's report today. The first is to authorize a text amendment in the UDO related to the campus district. Staff is available to answer potential questions, and there's a short presentation if needed, but given the time flow of the meeting, what I would just ask is if there's any questions you might have. And in the short version, this is trying to make some adjustments to the campus zoning district to make it more available to meet the needs of NC State and some of the plans that they may have, working collaboratively with them. So staff's available to answer questions. Happy to do that.
Yeah, this is something we've been discussing for a long time. Councilor Cox, you have a question, and then Councilor Branch.
Yes, the third recommendation, revise the application standards to remove and replace the requirement for submittal of a street and block plan. It says replace, but replace with what?
I'll ask staff to respond, Councilmember Cox.
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Romero with Planning and Development. So that particular provision would be replaced with likely a phasing plan and some other circulation type plan. These campus type institutional uses often don't have a network of public streets, but rather private streets and other drives. So they technically don't meet the definition of what a typical city block would be. So it would be replaced with some other circulation type plan.
Okay, and as far as moving other items to the campus master plan, what exactly does that mean? Is there a campus master plan today, or would a master plan have to be approved in the future?
The master plan would have to be approved. The campus district is really the kind of institutional or public equivalent to what you see as a PD or a plan development. So they would come through as a rezoning through Planning Commission to you as a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Branch?
Yeah, thank you. Just to Councilor Cox's point, one thing that I've realized that a lot of our campuses are trying to become more pedestrian friendly internally, which I think that is why that requirement there would be a hindrance to them. But one thing I will ask that as staff is moving forward with this, I'm going to support this, but as they're moving forward with the text plan, text change, pay attention to height and its proximity to residential areas, because I know campus is for all of our universities, and some of our universities are a lot more community oriented than others. Shaw's a great example. St. Augustine's, Peace, and Meredith, they're in the middle of neighborhoods. So as these campuses are looking at, particularly I'm talking about point 2, looking at height requirements, setbacks, I think will play a factor on how they abut residential neighborhoods. So if we can pay attention to that, I appreciate it.
I have one question. This is primarily related to NC State. Is that correct?
It is through conversations with NC State and their potential wanting to apply the campus district to Centennial Campus that some of these kind of barriers have come to our attention, and we feel like these changes will be beneficial to that site as well as others throughout the city.
Okay. I would like to see if somebody could make a motion to, all we're doing is authorizing the UDO text change. This will go to the Planning Commission and come back to us for a future public hearing.
I move for approval to authorize UDO text change.
Okay, Councilor Stewart had seconded that. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Next item is the Dix Edge Study Community Leader Group selection. Bynum Walters is here to help answer any questions. Again, we have a short presentation available. This is similar to your other selections you've made to identify community study groups associated with the Dix Edge study or these types of small area plans. Rather than going through the presentation, we could just see what your response is to the staff proposal and go from there to save time. So Bynum Walters is here to answer questions, but I guess I would start with what questions might you have for us?
Councilor Stewart.
Thank you. And Bynum, thanks to you and your team for all the great work on this. I did have a question because I think we've mentioned it here at the council table, and I know it was definitely caught in the staff report about our interest in making sure that we have someone who is a Spanish speaker or Latinx on this group. And I wasn't seeing that. I recognize that we may not have asked for that information, but wondering if you can kind of speak to that and where things stand at this moment with finding someone to fill that slot.
Right, that's a great question, and it's important to the integrity of outreach in the study that we work with Spanish-speaking folks in the project area. So we don't know if there's a Spanish speaker among the folks we have recommended forward to you. So that was a question that we did not ask explicitly. We do have a broader strategy to engage the Spanish-speaking population in the study area. That includes, we are working right now on recruitment of neighborhood ambassadors. We know that at least one of those will be bilingual. And then also we are working with independent businesses in the project area that are owned by Spanish-speaking individuals. And we have partnered with or are working with organizations that serve Spanish-speaking population specifically that are targeting that population in the area. So taking a broader strategy than just trying to hit one mark on the community leaders group, but working consistently in our engagement techniques throughout the project and also recruiting that neighborhood ambassador to address that issue.
So that is something you're continuing to seek out?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah.
And did you have a follow-up, Councilor Stewart?
Yeah, quick follow-up, and sorry if I missed this. And will you also be talking with our Hispanic and Immigrant Affairs Committee?
Yes, of course we will.
Fabulous, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good. Councilor Cox.
Yes, I see we have 5 individuals identified as renters. Are these renters living in the study area?
I would have to go back and check the details of that, but I believe, yes, they are.
Okay, and we have another line item of live, work, of volunteer. Is that work or volunteer in the study area?
Correct, work or volunteer in the study area.
Okay, could we get more of an idea of who actually lives in the study area?
So the full information about all applicants was included in your backup.
Okay. Okay, I'll take a look there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know offhand how many live in the study area?
I don't know that off the top of my head, no, sir. But I can look at the backup and see if I can tell you.
Yeah, that would be nice to know. I mean, I'd like to have more than 0 or 1 person living in the area.
Mm-hmm. So 22 of the applicants live, work, or volunteer in the study area. And there were 15 renters that applied. So of the pool of applicants total.
Okay, and of the ones that are in this list, how many live in the study area?
So we were targeting I want to go back and look at the benchmarks. We were targeting a specific number of folks. You know, we worked with the consultant group to identify benchmarks for the demographics we were trying to meet. So live, work, or volunteer in the study area, that's all of the members. And so your question then is, of those, who lives in the area? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I would have to really dig into the spreadsheet to be able to answer that question for you. We did not break down the metrics that way in the backup. I apologize.
Okay, I can't vote to support this unless I know how many actually live in the study area.
Is anybody interested in moving forward?
I have a question real quick, if I may. You mentioned the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program. Could you tell me what page that's on, or is it's not in this presentation?
No, ma'am, it's not in the backup. That's a separate recruitment that we're doing to identify 2 individuals to work with us, likely throughout the life of the project, to help us connect directly with the community. So folks of the community, working in the community to help us make those connections. This is something that we've seen work very well in other communities, and that we're starting with this project, and we are likely to continue with future projects as a way to just better network and interact with the community, a more authentic engagement, right? That folks who live and are active in the community know to have just stronger capital than staff reasonably can have in a particular project area.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Councilor Stewart?
I'm ready to make a motion if there are no more questions.
Okay, we will entertain that motion.
And I want to confirm that this is a staff recommendation appointment. We are not making these appointments. And so to that extent, and all the work that y'all are have already done and doing, I would like to move that we recommend appoint the recommended applicants to the community leader group.
Do we have a second? Councilor Knight? All in favor? Please raise your hands. Opposed? Clerk, that was 7 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you. Next.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
You, Ruffin.
So we're almost done. We're going as smoothly as we can. That's right. This is the model. You see what we're trying here. Except now we're going to have a presentation. So the next item is Wake Bus Rapid Transit on the Southern Corridor. We need to bring forward to you some alignment alternatives with a recommendation on the preferred route alignment. So Het Patel from Transportation is here to make a presentation.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve. We've been talking about this for years. So I've made a motion. Would anyone like to second? Councilor Buffkin, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Councilor Cox, was that you waving your hand? Are you You're muted. Are you opposed or in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Your hand was a little slow. I couldn't tell, but thank you. All right. So that was unanimous then, clerk.
Great. And let me just say thank you to Mr. Patel. Excellent presentation. The next item, which we're good. We're all good. It's a good thing.
I actually really appreciate the hard work that went into this.
Yeah,
and, you know, and like I said, we have been talking about this for many years. So I was really excited to see this on the agenda and us moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your hard work as well. Last item on the manager's report. This is just very quick. We had a late-breaking request from NCDOT Rail Division related to some planning grants, and I'm going to ask Michael Moore to just come forward and mention that very briefly. There's no presentation. We would like to ask for your support to partner with NCDOT.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Moore. I'm Director of Transportation for the City of Raleigh. I'm joined here in chambers today by Julie White, NCDOT's Deputy Director for Multimodal Transportation, and Jason Orthner, Director of NCDOT's Rail Division, in case you have any questions following up here. Many of you know that North Carolina Department of Transportation was recently awarded a Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grant, or a CRISI grant, from the Federal Rail Administration to assist with purchase of the S-Line. The S-Line is a lightly used railway line that runs from Raleigh north toward the North Carolina-Virginia border to Petersburg, Virginia, and south toward Sanford. NCDOT is purchasing the section between Raleigh and the North Carolina-Virginia border. The Commonwealth of Virginia is also coordinating with them in purchasing that piece north to Petersburg. As part of this, DOT is purchasing this for potential passenger rail service along the line. And as part of that, they're evaluating those rail service opportunities from Sanford, Raleigh, and on north to Wake Forest, Youngsville, and Franklinton. As part of that, to pursue that those opportunities, they want to also pursue a transportation-oriented development planning grant. Council may recall that we also applied for this grant last year and were awarded that for the New Bern Avenue BRT corridor, so it's a very similar opportunity here. NCDOT is developing a potential $2.5 million project scope for that planning study. It will require at least $250,000 in non-federal match, and NCDOT is looking to strengthen that application through local participation. DOT and the City of Raleigh will keep collaborating on a final scope and our level of contribution, which we would propose not to exceed $150,000. And that final scope will be documented in a municipal agreement and in a budget amendment that we would bring back to Council in the future for your approval. Today, we're requesting Council's authorization to negotiate with DOT to provide local matching funds, again, not to exceed $150,000. And for that planning grant, and then to authorize the mayor to send a letter of support and commitment on behalf of the City of Raleigh. And again, Jason, Julie, and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Buffkin, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support the recommended action. I just wanted to take a moment to say that this is some of the most exciting news we have gotten in this council term. The Friday evening, Saturday morning when I first learned about this, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. And this is so big for our city. It's so big for the whole region. I want to say thank you to Julie and the folks at NCDOT, Mr. Moore and your staff. This is life-changing for our whole region. The opportunity for folks to live in downtown Wake Forest, commute into our downtown without a car, stops along the way in Midtown Raleigh. And if you have ever sat in traffic on US 1 trying to get into Raleigh on a normal workday morning, you know how desperately needed that another option for folks to get into downtown from Sanford. So I just couldn't be more excited. I'm about to bust to make this motion to approve. But
I was going to say, is that a motion? Come on.
It certainly is.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Madam Mayor, I want to second it, but I also want to thank staff for their hard work and dedication on this. And I want to thank NCDOT and the Rail Division for what they're doing. And I look forward to our further collaborations on getting commuter rail going between Garner and Durham and Chapel Hill. So I look forward to us working together more.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, Michael, and I want to thank Julie. It was good seeing you. You know, the last time we had a chance to talk about this, it was pre-COVID. We actually did it in person. How things have changed, but this is great news for our region, and we're excited to be your partner. We look forward to help making it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I also do want to commend all the staff in Raleigh Department of Transportation, including the leadership of Michael Moore, to step forward and creatively work with our folks to come up with these solutions. So thank you. And with that, Mayor, that ends my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission.
Good afternoon, Tanya Tully here. The item today is twofold. One is an administrative budget amendment, and then the Raleigh Historic Development Commission is requesting use of the Historic Preservation Revolving Loan Fund. Chair Nick Fountain is available if you have any questions.
If you've read the backup, sure you know what this is about. So would anyone like to make a motion to approve? Councilor Buffkin, seconded by Councilor Stewart. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Report and recommendation of the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor Baldwin and members of council. My name is Jonathan Page. I currently serve as the chair for the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission, or SMAC. The first item on the agenda today from SMAC is our annual report for FY 2020. We do have a short presentation prepared for that if you'd like to see that now.
Jonathan, I'm having trouble hearing you. If you could get a little closer perhaps to the microphone.
Sure, sorry about that. Does that sound better?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah, so the first item on the agenda, on your agenda from SMAC today, is our FY 2020 annual report. We do have a short presentation on that if you'd like to see it. Otherwise, that information is in your backup. I would like to thank council and staff for all of the support and work that went in to the accomplishments that are detailed in that report. And Wayne Miles is also available today to answer any questions on that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay. Could I see a motion to approve? Councilor Stewart has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Branch. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. And the next part is the land preservation and development policy revisions.
Yes, lake preservation policy revisions. So that originally came before council back in 2019. At that time, there was some feedback and questions that was received by staff and the commission. Those recommendations and sort of questions from council have been incorporated into the new proposed revisions that we will see today. SMAC and staff have both recommended council consider and adopt the revisions to that lake preservation program that you will see today. And Scott Bryant is here to walk you through the details of those revisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Bryant with the Stormwater Management Division. I work with the Planning Business Group. A short presentation here. Next slide, please. So we're going to go through briefly the background on the lake policy, the updates that have been also performed in alignment with your strategic plan from 2015 as well as recently, summarize the key proposed changes for the lake preservation policy, and then receive discussion and feedback. Next slide. Raleigh has been a leader in lake preservation since 1994. The original policy was adopted in 1994, over a quarter of a century ago, with the goal of preserving lakes based on mutual benefit between lake owners and the city of Raleigh. The stormwater utility was created by council in 2004, which really advanced stormwater management, quantity and quality, and all the things that we're about in stormwater. This also provided significant funding, capital improvement funding for lake projects and other stormwater management projects. The lake policy was last amended or updated in 2006. At that point in time, council acknowledged the need to incorporate a drainage basin by drainage basin approach rather than a rigid citywide standard. The current revisions that Stormwater Commission and staff are working with council on are really to leverage that and to extend that even further, recognizing there's a need for flexibility within watersheds as well. Next slide. The very first lake preservation project was Beeman Lake. This was performed in 2004, again, that first year of the stormwater utility. This one was a little bit unique in that the city acquired this one in fee simple ownership. Most of the projects are acquired through easements. Next slide. North Shore Lake was another project. Here you see the completed earthen embankment and the spillway. That spillway is sized to carry the 1/3 probable maximum precipitation. That's about 10 inches of rain in 6 hours. Very significant project. Next slide. Brentwood Today was another project. This is a photo of the eroding spillway at Brentwood Today around the 2010 through 2012 timeframe. Next slide. Unfortunately, the spillway breached while the project was under design. We worked with council to actually talk about the issues and look at the options at that point in time. Next slide, please. Here you see the failed spillway. Debris moved downstream. The solution at that point in time, again, this is working with City Council and the Public Works Commission, Public Works Committee of Council in 2013 and following, to look at reconstruct the lake or to restabilize the stream. What was the best solution for the city? What was the best solution for the community? And that solution was to perform a stream stabilization project. It was really an early example of the kind of flexibility that the new revisions are seeking to incorporate. Next one. So, updates. The lake policy is updated in concert with your strategic plan from 2015, as well as more recent updates from 2020, including Initiative 1.5, which looks at stream restoration and also reviewing dams for their pros as well as for their cons or for their negative impact. So, this policy is well aligned with that. What are the key proposed changes for the lake policy? First, to provide a clear, consistent, prioritized framework for investing stormwater funds in lakes and lake-related projects. It's moving from a framework of lake preservation to lake management, which includes lake preservation. Priorities are based on public and environmental benefit. These top priorities are public safety, flood control, water quality, and regulatory compliance. There are other benefits as well, including indirect benefits, but these are the top 4 that we look at. Flexibility, a key in this proposed changes. Provide flexibility for the city in working with the community to choose the preferred course of action. This could be lake preservation or reconstruction. This could be stream restoration. This could be creating wetlands. This could be a combination of those or other solutions that best fit the lake or the lake area. Identify the fitting solutions through the watershed planning process. Other proposed changes. Incorporate the goals for green stormwater infrastructure as well as the strategic plan with an emphasis on growth and natural resources. GSI, or green stormwater infrastructure, really focuses on a close-to-source control. There's also a need for more regional control, and that's where lakes and lake areas can provide benefits as well. We want a balanced approach. The key proposed changes also clarify the relationship between lakes and regulatory programs, clarifies the program funding source as stormwater utility funds. Importantly, it does not limit nor constrain the use of other funds, non-stormwater funds, but it clarifies the use of stormwater utility funds to be used in this way for the lakes policy. Would require dedication of easements based on the benefits for the property owners and the community. We received some excellent feedback from council in 2019, and this is specifically how that feedback has been addressed. Get back up one slide, please. First, we heard the request for the list of lakes and which lakes are assets for preservation. That was provided last fall. There's 102 on that list. A significant request for more public input and community engagement. We really heard that and incorporated 3 aspects to that. Public input for each specific project, Stormwater Management Advisory Commission review and approval of each and every project, and then also to consider aesthetic, recreational, and other benefits from lakes. Stormwater recognizes there are many indirect benefits from the stormwater activities that are focused on water quality and/or flood control. We're excited that those projects do that. The way that we and the commissioner are proposing that the policy take that into account is to add a process for final council review, confirmation, if you will, in any situation where the recommendation and all the input is leading towards not preserving the lake. Next slide. Okay, thank you very much. In summary, this really seeks to maintain the benefits of the lake policy from 1994 while adding needed flexibility to meet today's environment as well as the future. With that, I'd like to take any questions, and again, thank council, thank the commission, thank the Stormwater team for helping with all of this.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Councilor Cox?
Yes, I see in the backup memo that there is a recommendation that comes with this package to look into eliminating the upper lake at Durant Nature Park. Is that correct?
There has been a study performed in concert with our Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources partners in evaluation of options for Upper Durant. It's still in the study phase. If the policy were to be accepted, then the next phase of that would be a further examination, further public input, further determination of the recommendation for that facility, and then ultimately City Council confirmation of what to do for that facility.
Okay, because, up to date, there really hasn't been any citizen input into this. I've heard from some neighbors who have caught wind of this that live adjacent to the park, and they're very concerned about losing the lake because it really is a major part of the park. And so I'm willing to vote in favor of this policy, but only with the caveat that there is significant citizen engagement, and because it's going to losing that lake could affect property values, and there will be a lot of people really ticked off about it if we don't do this right.
Councilor Buffkin?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to respond very briefly on the Upper Lake issue at Durant Park, I've heard from some people who initially were concerned, but when provided with the context that the recommendation or the study was being done by experts at North Carolina State and the ecological impact of damming this lake rather than having a more of a wetlands type setting, concern really was mitigated a lot. And I don't know that we could say for certain this is going to affect property values one way or another. That seems very speculative to me. So while the point is well taken, certainly we do need to reach out to members of the community and provide this information, give them an opportunity to review and comment, and it all needs to be carefully considered. I do not have the feeling that the folks in neighborhoods like Durant Trails and places around there in District A are overly concerned at this point, but they certainly do want to get the information. They certainly do love our park, and the park staff tells me that traffic at Durant Nature Park is up over 100% from what it was last year. So it's certainly a beloved park and should be handled appropriately. But I think given all the study and expertise that goes into developing this and the ecological concerns and the actual improvements that would be made from converting this to a wetland from an environmental standpoint, I don't know that there is a lot of opposition to the idea out there.
Well, we don't know because we haven't heard.
Councilor Knight, excuse me. Please do not speak unless you're called on. Councilor Knight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Chairman Page and the rest of the commission on the hard work that they've done to put together this annual report and the work plan, and of course, staff. Wayne and your staff helping to do that, and it's comprehensive. It's another example of our citizen volunteers working real hard out there for the city and working with our city staff to get the job done. So it was a great report and work plan, and I appreciate that. As to the revisions of the lake preservation and development policy, I also appreciate the work that went on for this project in the responsiveness to council, and with a lot of new folks on the council, we will continue to have conversation around that. I do appreciate the broadening oversight from preservation to management. I think that is obviously a better way to go, and I appreciate y'all looking at it from that perspective. Also, specifically like the inclusion of the looking at dams within the city and to see what effects they're having, and to see if we should probably be taking some of those down for sure. And then last but not least, the inclusion of GSI and the continuation of trying to further and strengthen that priority for the city, because that gets obviously to a lot of the issues that Councilor Ford and the rest of us are dealing with on stormwater. And it looks to me, in most cases, the better way to go. And I appreciate the prioritization from this commission and also staff on that. So thanks a lot. Good work, guys, and look forward to continuing to work with you all on these big issues.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm going to ask.
Madam, just real quick, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Branch.
Just first of all, thank you for the work and everything you're doing. I know a lot of this focus was around our lakes and things in preservation and going forward. I just want to make sure we look at our wetlands and the water flow out of them, because I think wetlands are designed to kind of store water, but if that water never leaves, it backs up, causing other issues. So if we can kind of look at that as well, I'll be appreciative, but I will support this report.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Councilor Buffkin?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to make a motion. I did want to ask if staff could send us that city manager's report from last year, just so we have it at the top of our inboxes. I'd be interested in seeing the inventory of 100 of the 102 lakes we have. But it looked like Ms. Stewart maybe wanted to say something, so I'll make a motion whenever you're ready, Mayor.
I'm ready.
I move that we adopt the proposed 2020 Lake Management Evaluation Program as updated as the updated lake preservation policy for stormwater management capital improvement projects.
Councilor Stewart has seconded that. Councilor Cox, do you have a question?
I'm going to make a comment on this motion and say that I'm going to vote against it because of the lack of engagement with the citizens around and near Durant Park and those who are concerned about Durant Park to date. It's a shame that we haven't had the opportunity to have that kind of a citizen engagement to date. And as a consequence, I'm going to vote against this piece.
Councilor Stewart?
Just a counterpoint that this plan, it took that advice from 2019 and added it in so that there will be lots of citizen engagement around these issues, which includes Durant Park. So my second stand.
Well, I was going to say that part of the whole purpose of approving this is to insert the whole community engagement piece into the process. So I want to thank staff for doing that. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Clerk, that is 7-1 with Councilor Cox opposed. Next is matter scheduled for public hearing. The first item is the Economic Development Grant for Bandwidth, Inc. I believe that no one has signed up to speak. I am going to open the hearing. and I am going to close the hearing. Anybody have any questions, and does anybody want to make a motion? And if everybody's not going to respond, it's going to be a very long day. Councilor Branch?
Yes, I was pulling up the actual information for me. I was looking at something else. But I moved to authorize the city manager authorize the staff to finalize grant terms and authorize the city manager to execute appropriate agreements to award the grant.
Okay, do we have a second? Councilor Stewart, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That was unanimous, clerk. The next item is public nuisance abatement, property liens. No one has signed up to speak on this.
Mayor, may I speak?
Well, what happened? You're unmuted.
I've been practicing.
Okay.
I have two that need to be withdrawn as if charges have already been paid, and that's 1804 Bennett Street and 4516 Fox Road. They have been paid and should be withdrawn from the agenda.
So 4516.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? No? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. There's no one scheduled to speak, so I'm going to close the hearing. Do we have a motion? Councilor Stewart?
So moved.
Seconded by Councilor Branch. All in favor? Opposed? That was unanimous, clerk. The next is petition annexation, contiguous inside the ETJ, 6101 Perry Creek Road. I have one person who signed up in support, no opposition. Does anybody have any questions on this matter of staff? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. I think we are ready to make a motion to approve if person who wants to speak in support. Councilor Cox, yes?
Is it closed yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the person who was signed up to speak, Jesse Hardesty, is okay with us closing the hearing and moving forward.
Yes, I was just a part of the project team to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I will close the session. Councilor Cox?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the annexation. I don't believe there's anything special I have to read, is there?
I think we'll just go, oh, sorry, Mayor. May I speak quickly?
Yes.
With each of the recommended actions, you can say it's approved in accordance with the recommended action, or we can just move forward with the assumption that each motion is a motion to approve in accordance with the recommended action, because there's want to make sure we get the right effective date and whatnot in the approval.
Yeah, I'll move to approve in accordance with the recommended action.
Do we have a second? Councilor Branch is seconded. All in favor? Any opposition? Clerk, that was unanimous. Next we have rezoning Z4819. I've been excused from this. I'm going to ask Councilor Branch to, or Mayor Pro Tem Branch to take over.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. At this time, we're going to have staff. I think they do have a presentation for this one. Bynum?
Yes, sir. Bynum Walter, Raleigh Planning and Development. This is 1100 St. Albans Drive. It's a request to rezone just over 3 acres, 3.39 acres, from commercial mixed use, 3-story height limit, parking limited, and zoning conditions to OX20, that's office mixed use with a 20-story height limit, urban limited frontage and conditions. This property is located at the northwest corner of Wake Forest and St. Albans, and generally zoning in the area for that property and to the at the southwest quadrant of that intersection is commercial mixed use. and to the north and northeast is generally office mixed use. So a shift in district puts it more in line with what's at other corners of the intersection there. And then there is some residential zoning at the periphery of that area. The proposed conditions, you may remember that this was before you previously and had a condition to prohibit residential that has been residential use that has been removed. So they have specified permitted uses on the ground floor of the parking structure to include only indoor recreation, office, personal services, eating establishments, and retail sales. Right-of-way dedication is required along St. Albans Drive. Retail sales are limited to no more than 15,000 square feet. Building height is limited to 15 stories and 250 feet. And office uses are limited to no more than 400,000 square feet. They have required that trash collection only be serviced from the parking structure, and that a minimum of 95% of the parking should be in a structured garage. They've also limited the size of the parking structure to no more than 360,000 square feet, and they have specified vehicular ingress and egress located off Benson Drive and or internally via an access point off St. Albans. They've specified facade materials, wood, glass, metal, concrete, clay or brick masonry, stone masonry, stucco or ethos are prohibited. And then they have limited the peak stormwater runoff rate to the 50-year storm event. The change in entitlement here is pretty significant. So the residential max units goes up from about 140 to about 660. The setbacks are relatively the same. The office square footage goes up from 134,000 square feet possible to 400,000 square feet possible. And then the retail square footage goes from 0 to about 15,000 square feet. This request is consistent with the future land use map. It's also consistent with the urban form map in the area. And it is consistent, so to speak, with the Midtown St. Albans plan, which has not yet been adopted or approved by council. That's currently under review. There's a designation for St. Albans as a 4-lane divided road between Benson Drive and Wake Forest, and also a recommendation for extending Benson Drive between Dresser Court and St. Albans. If we could go ahead about 3 more slides, we'd be caught up. Great, that's great. Thank you. So you can see here, Benson would extend north from where that blue dash is on the drawing up to Dresser Court, and then the street designation would be along the south side of the parcel here. This is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan, as you can see on the next slide. And then on the next slide, I can tell you about some of the consistent policies here. A number were identified. There's a couple more on the next slide. And then there are, I believe, a handful of inconsistent policies, just this one around level of service, some concerns around traffic here. And again, Planning Commission recommends approval, and this case was filed last year and did receive a vote from Midtown CAC in favor, 48 yes or no. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have before we open the public hearing. I apologize that I kept talking before the slides came up because I know you all want to keep moving. It's late in the afternoon. Let me know how I can answer questions.
No problem. Any questions from council members before opening hearing for staff? All right. So I have the list here. First, for those who are for, I just have a list of names. I guess Mike Daniels. Are they for? I can take the for or against.
I think we're going to start with Amanda Bainbridge.
Okay, so it'll be 8 minutes per side, and we'll go with those that are for.
We only have people on that are supporting.
Okay. Thank you. So Amanda?
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. And I know I submitted a PowerPoint as well. I don't know if y'all can pop that up so I can get started. So Amanda Bambrick, Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 530. Mike Daniels with Coastal is here as well. Eric Brunk from Ratio Architects, and then Rick Baker and Cliff Lawson, engineers from Timmons. If we have technical questions, we can talk to them. I'm going to buzz through this as quickly as I can. So if you could go ahead and, so just generally speaking, this is the Coastal headquarter. We are very excited about it. We've spent a good bit of time working with folks, working with neighbors, working with the town to kind of make this a project that is really exciting. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? Obviously, sort of a general site overview. Next slide, please. Here's a more general layout that we share: the parking garage, tree con in the back, and basically just the office tower. As you know, the site's adjacent to the existing Coastal site, and the idea is this to be kind of a long-term campus environment. Next up. Here's where I want to focus my time. I spent a lot of time here, and I really wanted to kind of highlight that, and then I'm going to talk briefly about the conditions, and I think we have some folks in support here to talk. Our first neighbor meeting was in July of 2019. We identified immediately that stormwater was the primary concern there. So we started a dialogue between ourselves, the neighbors, and the city, where we actually met with the city and the neighbors a couple of different times. We've walked the site, and then we held a handful of meetings actually at Coastal to make sure that we were taking into account these considerations. So what you'll note here is between July and November of 2019, we slowed down dramatically so that we could understand the impact of existing stormwater conditions on the site and really kind of drill down to what the primary concerns of the neighbors were. Next slide, please. We met with the Corridor Alliance. We met a couple more times with the neighbors. Really feel like we came together with a package of things that I can discuss in a little more detail. And given the site's location, we met and presented at both the Midtown and the Atlantic CAC and got approvals at both. Next slide. We started discussing in September. We had a slight delay at council, talking a little bit about the St. Albans situation, which I'll address in a second. We revised the conditions to take into account those concerns and resubmitted them. And we're here before you today, obviously, for the public hearing. Next slide, please. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Bynum went through all of these. We have a bunch of conditions. This is a new one. If you could stay here for a second, we are dedicating more right-of-way to make this condition more consistent with the Midtown St. Albans plan. Even though that hasn't passed yet, we wanted to be respectful of the traffic considerations and attempt to address the one inconsistent policy the case had. Next slide. Stormwater, actually go ahead and go to the next slide. I wanted to highlight this. Stormwater was the biggest focus by far, and I'll let the neighbors speak as well for this, so I'm not putting words in their mouth. But we're going to the 50-year storm, and Coastal is committing to additional almost $700,000, and we've been working directly with the head of the stormwater department to divert stormwater generated by other uses that still would have some impact on our site, but shooting it down St. Albans, and then we're increasing the amount of on-site detention than where the design started. So I really am proud of that level of collaboration. Next slide. Again, this was just part of the study we did between July and November, kind of identifying where the stormwater was actually coming from. There's several uses out there that predate the current code as far as stormwater. Next slide. Again, kind of showing the stormwater. Next slide. Transportation, we're doing a number of things. And like I said, the newest thing is adding the maximum width that we could to essentially build out a third lane on St. Albans. Next slide. And I'll just conclude here. We've actually had a lot of really positive communications over time. The chair of the Atlantic CAC in Midtown, we've all been working together, and it's a good project. It's a good place, and I feel really good about it, and we're hoping that you will pass it today. Thank you. I defer the rest of my time.
All right, thank you. There's 3 minutes. Whoever's next would like to speak. I guess Cliff or Rick or Anna. So,
is Ann on by any chance on the list?
Ann is. Ann is.
So let's go to Ann. I think if you have Mike Eric, Rick, and Cliff. They're all on my team, and they don't need to speak unless there are questions. So
Okay.
whoever's left can talk.
So
Can you hear me?
we can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's about as good as I can get.
Okay.
You good?
You can go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. As Amanda said, I'm on Colgate Place along with 4 other neighbors, and 100% of the 30 acres of impervious surface stormwater leaves the coastal property and comes in our backyard. So we're very, very pleased with how coastal was responsive to our needs. And but I did want you to know that we are not in the 500-foot notice. And had I not been a part of the CAC when this went through, I would not have known this was even happening. So we were really happy to be a part of this process throughout for the last 2 years, really. If there could be an expansion when it's stormwater related of notice downstream, that would be very helpful. But in this case, we were able to accommodate otherwise, and we look forward to coastal being a good neighbor.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And you say everyone else is on your team, so there's 2 minutes left. Is there anyone else there looking to speak, or we'll close the hearing?
No, again, unless there's anybody besides Mike, Eric, Rick, and Cliff, they're my team. I don't think any of them want to say anything now. And again, I'll defer my time. I know you guys have had a long day. Again, and overall, I feel like this has been a really, really good process.
Thank you. We have no one speaking opposition, so we'll close the hearing and bring it back to council. Councilman Buffkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, as you've heard, the product of a lot of hard work on several complicated issues has brought this case to us, and it's a good project with a really good story behind it. Part of what Amanda skipped through was the background and history of this credit union, which was established to serve IBMers that were living in Raleigh, commuting out to RTP. And I'm so proud that they've decided to expand their presence here in Midtown Raleigh and locate this headquarters building. All the renderings I've seen have me really excited about the appearance of the building, and it's going to be a very nice marker on the eastern edge of Midtown proper and just outside my own neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to seeing things progress, and very proud that the stormwater issues, which are actually all issues that exist today, and Coastal's been very charitable in addressing those, and you saw the great expense that they are going to relieve the neighbors of some of those problems, and Ms. Sharon has been a great partner in that effort all along. I've walked her backyard and stream bank, and the erosion, at least at the time I saw it, was more than 6 or 7 feet, and her neighbors are getting water in their basement. So this is a serious problem and a reminder why this council needs to take seriously the efforts Councilmember Stewart has kicked off to address stormwater in a more comprehensive way across the city. And we need to take these concerns to heart when we come back for budget season and consider what the appropriate stormwater fee is. So lots to learn and lots of good product here. And at the appropriate time, Mr. Mayor, I'll move for adoption of the proposed consistency statement.
All right. Any other councilors wishing to say anything? Councilor Cox?
Yes, I just want to say that I look forward to voting for this project. It's an excellent project that has come about through the cooperation between the neighbors and the developer. And I think it's a beautiful example, again, of the success, not just the success, but a better project coming out as a result of our citizen advisory council process that we've had in this city for 50 years. And so very happy about the outcome, and I look forward to voting for it.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Buffkin, now may be a good time.
Thank you. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated October 20, 2020 contained in the agenda materials and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
Okay, and that's been seconded by Councilor Fort. All those approve showing by raising your hand. All right. Madam Clerk, motion carries 7-0 with the mayor excused. So Beth, can you ping the mayor and let her know she can return now? And I will cue staff up for text change TC 1419, site plan and plot plan and revisions. Welcome back, Madam Mayor. We're now moving to text change TC 1419.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Again, no one has signed up to speak on this issue. We have Justin Ramada for Planning and Development who can answer any questions. Do we have any questions on this? Councilor Stewart.
Not so much a question, but a comment. So maybe I should wait till you close the hearing.
Okay, well, I was going to open the hearing and then I will close it. Do we have any questions now?
Yes, thank you. So I am super excited about this text change. It's something I've been actively working on for quite some time to help our small and mid-sized business community. And I'm delighted in where we've landed. I've also heard some feedback that we could go even further. So I, at the right time, would love to make a motion to move that with the caveat that staff understands that we're ready to keep going with this kind of work.
So what is it to move further?
So in doing the site plan versus plot plan, to make sure that we're not just using traffic and parking as an indicator. I understand that Durham has more kind of nuanced policies that have a number of different indicators that they use to signal that transition. And so just kind of continuing to make progress on this to help our business community.
Okay, so this is something that we can't add now. We would have to go back and expand.
That's my understanding, yep. But I enthusiastically support the motion before us today.
Okay, is that a motion?
That is a motion if I have to read the proposed consistency statement, unless folks have questions. Okay, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated October 20th, 2020, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning text amendment for the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
Do we have a second? Councilor Knight has seconded that. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No opposition. I would like for staff to note that we have indicated we want to take those next steps in moving forward. So any additional text changes, we are open to that. Not open, we're encouraging that quickly. Okay. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the Economic Development and Innovation Committee.
Yeah, no report. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, the 27th at 1:30 p.m. and it's virtual.
Report and recommendation of the Growth and Natural Resources Committee.
No report. We have our next meeting set also for the 27th at 4 p.m. and it will be virtual. We have one item, the UDO Chapter 9 Natural Resource Protection.
Okay, thank you. Report of the recommendation to Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Community Committee. We will not be holding a meeting next week. Okay. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the Transportation and Transit Committee.
No report, but we will be meeting on the 29th at our regular time, virtual at 3 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Next, we have the report from the mayor and city council. I'm going to ask Councilor Stewart to start off.
No report.
Councilor Branch.
Just two quick things. One, District C meeting will be a virtual meeting on November the 18th at 6:30 p.m. This is a Wednesday. Also, on our conversation that we had earlier, just want to mention that as far as community engagement, just want to mention that we have had past chairs come before us with some examples and information, things they wanted to see change. If we can just have that information, make sure it's passed on to our consultant and staff to incorporate as appropriate. And that is all I have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Council Member Melton.
No report.
Council Member Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report today.
Council Member Cox.
Yes. Earlier, we heard from Mr. Gaylord about the sports stadium, and we know that Z13 is winding its way to City Council. And I was struck because last week I watched the town halls with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And during Mr. Trump's town hall, he made an interesting statement. He says he's done more for the black community than any president in the history of the United States, except Abraham Lincoln. And as part of his comments, he mentioned that one of the benefits he's bringing to the black community are opportunity zones. And we've had a lot of discussion about the projects that are being planned for the southeast or the southern opportunity zone that we have in Raleigh. And so I would like to get, as we move forward with these projects, I would like to understand better what the opportunities are for the black community as well as others that live in this area. What are the opportunities in terms of jobs, in terms of education? I've heard general statements about opportunity, but I haven't seen specifics. And I don't know if that's something that staff can provide an evaluation for, or if this is something that could come from the developer. And then the zoning request in particular, we look at both consistency with the comp plan, but we also look at the community benefits of a proposal. And since this is in an opportunity zone, I think we need to evaluate Z13 and any other development proposals under the lens of what the benefit that we provided as a result of being in an opportunity zone. And so that's my request to staff, that as we move forward with this, that we are given some guidance as to what the benefits will be, particularly with the black community. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Council.
Being a black male, I've been on some conversations about opportunity zones, and I'll be glad to also share some information that I've received from Councilman Cox. But one thing I want to say about opportunity zones, it really come down to who can buy the land. That can, and from a tax credit standpoint, but we'll wait and let staff come back and bring forth the information that he has, and maybe a report or something.
Yeah, and that's what I had asked earlier today, was that they come back with more details, a timeline, a community engagement plan, and then we have an understanding of how this would move forward. So, thank you. Next, we have Councilor Knight.
I have one other item, I'm sorry.
Okay, Councilor.
The only other thing I wanted to request is that we're approaching the 4-month mark since we adopted our budget this year. And given the economic situation that we're in with COVID, I was wondering if we could get an update from staff about how we're doing with revenues. Yes, sir.
I don't see why not. Ruffin?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Cox. We're planning and have already scheduled an update for you at your November 17th council meeting to both deliver the annual financial report as well as a projection into next year. So that's on the schedule and will line up with when we get revenue reports from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Knight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two things. One, I continue to be impressed by the level of quality that the staff continues to work on during the COVID pandemic. And I just want to say thanks for all of y'all's continued efforts at a very high level. We get to see this directly at council meetings, but also on our one-on-one interaction with staff. So again, appreciate that. Good work is still happening and going on, and great things are still happening for the city, even under these trying circumstances. And in that note, the council won't meet again as a body until after the election. So I wanted to remind people to please, please, please go vote. It is very, very important for you, not only individually, but as a community. Our elected officials at all levels will affect how our community moves forward. So please go vote. On that, I know passions are running high, and we've seen a lot of campaign signs pop up around town, and they're taking a lot of different shapes and forms. I've even seen some hanging from trees, one in particular over Glenwood, which I can't imagine is legal, so I hope if it's not, we will get that taken down. But we do have regulations and protections that exist related to political signs. And there's a page on our website that you can Google. Simply search political signs on the homepage. When you go right to it, state law governs a lot of this, but we provide information on our website along with our own rules. We have rules related to how big signs could be, residential from commercial zoning districts, and these rules were on the page I mentioned. Signs are permitted in the right-of-ways up to 30 days before voting and up to 10 days after election day. So have them taken down after the election, please. And it is a class 3 misdemeanor for people to steal, deface, vandalize, or unlawfully remove a political sign that's lawfully placed. And I've been getting a lot of contacts about that, and I'm sure we've all seen the videos. They can be used against you. So please do not steal or deface signs. So thank you, everybody. Keep it fair and fine, and let's go out and everybody vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ford.
No report today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one item today, and it's an important item. I've been working with Dr. Johnny Hill, who is the Dean of the Shaw University Divinity School. And he made me aware that Shaw University, which, by the way, was founded in 1865, it has a very rich history here, recently started a Center for Racial and Social Justice. And they have submitted a request for funding for what we're calling Courageous Community Conversations. This would be a partnership between Shaw's Center for Racial and Social Injustice and the city of Raleigh. Not only would they be bringing the community together for these conversations, but they also will bring forward a 10-point plan to advance racial and social equity in the city of Raleigh. Some of the courageous conversations would center around, they're proposing 4 critical areas. And some of what they're talking about, we have been speaking about today. The first is public safety, centered on policing, jailing, bonding in the courts, community policing, community engagement, and restorative justice. The second is economic development, with affordable housing, gentrification, and opportunity zones being one bucket. The third is health equity, so access to health care, mental health, and ecological justice in the environment. And the fourth is education, K-12 learning communities, strengthening college and universities, and adult learners. They have asked for a grant in the amount of $50,000. And this proposed budget would include the facilitation, organizing, and planning for the forums, as well as conducting the research, writing, and drafting of the detailed 10-point plan for consideration and development. I shared this with you, and I am asking for your support today. I think this is a great next step. It allows us to work with one of our leading HBCUs in the country, but also it allows them to be that third party that brings the community together with our support. So I'm asking for that support today to move forward. Councilor Branch.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forward. And I think Shaw leading this conversation at this time is what's needed. It's what Shaw has always done. They've stepped up and served and brought the community together when you have no difference of ideas and opinions to come up with a solution to move us all forward. So I definitely support this $50,000 and move to approve that we pull that from our council contingency funds to support this endeavor.
Do I have a second? Councilor Fort has seconded that. All in favor? Is anyone opposed? Thank you. I am thrilled that we will be partnering with Shaw on this, and I really appreciate all of y'all's support. Thank you. I can't wait for next steps and to participate in this process. So thank you. Okay, next we have appointments, clerk.
Yes, the first item we have Natural Historic Resources and Museums Advisory Board. You have 2 vacancies. The ballot vote resulted in 2 nominees from Councilor Fort, Alexander Casado, and Chip Patterson. So that would appear on your next agenda. The next item is your...
Can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Sure.
For the historical resources and museums, I just want to remind everybody that diversity is important. And I think that Councilor Fort is actually asking around the Oberlin community if there might be some interest in serving on this. So looking forward to moving that forward.
Very good. The next item would be your study group on council terms, salaries, voter engagement, and participation. You went through 3 rounds of balloting, and you came up with the following 7 people to fill the 7 vacancies: Eric Baum, Catherine Rose Lloyd Lawson, Robbie Rickard, Harvey Smith, Ashton Smith, Justin L. Sutton, and Beth Trejos. So it would be appropriate for you to confirm that ballot in open session.
Okay, I actually have a motion I want to make. I think that there's some consensus that we want to strive for a little more diversity on this study group. I'm going to make a motion to approve or appoint the original 7 members, which we've already approved. But I would like to ask, and this comes after conversations with some groups like the RWCA, I would like to expand the study group by 3 additional members for a total of 10 members, and ask that these seats be filled by council nominations and a subsequent vote using the ballot process. And I know, clerk, you'll be very excited to hear that, another ballot process. But or I also know that there are certain council members interested in nominating some folks. So what I would say is, let's approve this process, and then if anybody would like to make a nomination, let's hear those nominations. So is everybody in favor of expanding this group to 10 with 3 additional members? May I have a show of hands? Okay.
I have a comment.
Is anyone opposed to this?
I have a comment.
Can you give me a minute? Okay. Process, please.
Well, you're going to have the vote before I get a chance to say anything.
Councilor Cox, I am trying to figure out the motion and build some consensus here. Thank you very much. So right now we would have, we would add the 3 additional members. And what I would like to do is have those who may want to make a nomination do so after this, and then we'll determine the timeline. So is everybody okay with that? Okay, so 2-point process. All right, so the first is the motion to expand the study group. Councillor Cox, you have a comment?
Yes, I think it's fine to expand the study group. However, I think we're doing really a disservice to people because we have 7 other positions. When we look at the candidate list, we really don't have diversity in the candidate list that reflects the diversity of our city. I really think the proper thing to do would be to open all the positions, all 10 positions, to everyone in the city, and make sure this time around that we actually advertise what's going on, and so that people can become involved. I don't like the message that we're going to accept a predominantly white board and then say, oh, by the way, we'll add 3 more positions. It just does not sit well with me. We really should open this up and provide equal opportunity with all of these positions. But if this council wants to move ahead with this process, so be it. I will make a nomination, but I'm not happy about this.
So let's see, I am going to then make a motion that we expand this to 10 seats with 3 additional members. Do I have a second? Councilor Fort, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, that was 7-1, clerk, with Councilor Cox opposed. The second part is making a nomination. We could take this up at our next. Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand raised.
Well, I have a nomination we can make now. I know we'll be voting later, but I think if some have some now, we can go ahead and put them in. And then if some people want to submit, we have to set that deadline up.
Okay. All right, here's what I'm proposing, that we make nominations. You have until Friday to make a nomination. Clerk, if you could put out the ballot on Friday, we can start that voting and start that process, okay?
Am I understanding that, when will you be making these nominations?
So Mayor Pro Tem has a motion he would like to make, or a nomination. So why don't we do that right now? Whoever has a nomination now. So I have Mayor Pro Tem Branch, then Melton, then Fort, and then Cox.
Okay.
Yes, I like it.
Excuse me, all of the nominations would be made at the table, and then we would send out a ballot on Friday. Is that what you're saying?
We're making nominations now.
Okay.
We will leave this open until Friday if anyone else would like to make a nomination. Send out the ballots on Friday with the names that you have received at 10 o'clock, and ask that we vote by 4 or whatever.
Okay.
All right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For Tim Branch.
Yeah, I was going to nominate Eugene Weeks.
Okay.
We had Councilmember Melton.
Yeah, I forgot where I was for a second. I must say thank you, Your Honor. I'm in court at a council meeting. I nominate Diana Powell.
I'm sorry?
Diana Powell.
Councilmember Fort.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Nirvana Crew.
Councilmember Fort, does she live in the ETJ?
She does, and I need to make an additional motion as it relates to that at the appropriate time.
Could you do that now?
Yes, ma'am, I could. I would like to make a motion that we make an exception and allow Ms. Crew to serve on the board, even though she serves in she resides in the ETJ. I think we've made similar exemptions or exceptions in the past.
Okay, clerk, so when you're going through this and the addresses, you know that that has been requested. Do we need a vote on that? Okay.
Yes.
Is that a motion, Councilor Ford?
Yes, it is.
Okay, do we have a second? Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Branch. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That was unanimous, clerk.
And I will take that to indicate that anyone who lives in the ETJ would be allowed to serve if they receive 5 votes or more.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Councilor Cox.
Yes, I would like to nominate Charles Francis.
Okay, so we have 4 nominations: Eugene Weeks, Diana Powell, Nirvana Crew, and Charles Francis. And clerk, if any additional nominations come in by, say, Friday at 10 o'clock, you can add those on the list. All right?
Yes,
and, just as a point of record, we have opened this twice. The first time we brought this up was in January. And I asked the city attorney to reopen the nominations again because we had 7 people who had signed up. We did that. And in talking with the RWCA yesterday, they said, you know, we weren't really paying attention to this issue, and we will do a better job of that. So I'm glad that they did reach out to us, and we were able to have the conversations and open this up. So, Councilmember Melton.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, I wanted to add a point about the process and the individuals who have already been appointed.
Mm-hmm.
This came up in December or January of this year, where we were approached by a group of residents asking to look at ways to increase voter turnout in municipal elections, ways to expand access for service on council, including the term limits or term lengths and council compensation. This issue also came up a lot this summer when we were meeting with community groups about the issues of social justice and racial justice that we have seen across the country. And this was a list of demands that we saw from community groups this summer as well. So it's, I think, been at attention for a long period of time. I think it's really important work. You know, before recent elections, I think a lot of folks who served on the council all looked very similar or had similar demographics. And I think opening up access to different individuals and groups is incredibly important, and to leave the door of opportunity open behind us. And when I was looking at the original group of 7 that we just appointed, I noticed that there's a Black man, there's a gay man, there's someone who is physically disabled, there's women. And so I do think that that is pulling from different groups and demographics that we need to hear from. Many of them ran for office before, but I'm sensitive to the concerns that there are voices lacking in our Black community and in our Southeast Raleigh community. And so I was intentional with my nomination, knowing that we have some seats that need to still be filled, and that's why I nominated the person I did. And I think that those nominations have been consistent from Councilmember Fort, Councilmember Cox, and Mayor Pro Tem Branch. So I think that once we add these 3 additional seats, I do think we're going to have a representative group. And I think that this is important work that was raised. We didn't raise this, it came from the community, and we heard it even more this summer. And so I think it needs to happen. I also think there's been some misinformation in the community that we're trying to give ourselves raises or extend our own council terms. It's not what this is intended to do. Any proposed changes from this task force would come to us to examine, possibly enact, and they would take effect in future elections. Maybe 21 if it can get done in time, probably not, maybe until 23. But this isn't about us staying in office longer or giving ourselves raises, and I want to make sure that we're clear about that too.
Thank you, Councilor Melton. Okay, continue, clerk, with the Human Relations Commission.
Aye. Yes, you have one vacancy due to the resignation of Emily Kissy. She has a new job and said she could not vote the time, so you have one vacancy for consideration.
So we would move an alternate into that permanent position. We had 2 alternates that we recently nominated. So one of those alternates would move, and we will be nominating another alternate. And what I would like to ask you to do is share with us again the list of people who had applied to serve on the Human Relations Commission, and let's look and see what bucket that, or what skill set need there is in making a new appointment.
Okay. One question of the 2 alternates, how do you decide which one you want to move up to a regular meeting? You can do it alphabetically, or?
Let's do, can't remember.
You don't know who they are.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, my recommendation for right now is just do it alphabetically. In the past, is whoever's been the alternate the longest, but
Right.
both of these alternates were appointed at the exact same time. So I would just say do it alphabetically, and then going forward, we replace the alternate. Then we have a time gap between our alternates.
Right.
Okay, that would mean that you're moving Christopher Cozy up as a regular member, and we will send you a list of all of those who had applied in the past and include it on the next agenda for consideration of nominations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is the Arts Commission. The term of Courtney Greer is expiring, and she's eligible for reappointment, but I would like to hold this until the next meeting. She serves on the Grants Committee, and we want to make sure that she had initially said she did not want to be reappointed, but we're checking into the Grants Committee to see how that would impact. So if you'd hold this one to the next meeting, I can report her status.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. The term of Elizabeth Alley is expiring. She is eligible and would like to be considered.
I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Councilor Melton, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, clerk.
Okay, the next item is the Planning Commission. The term of Michelle McIntosh is expiring. She is eligible and would like to be considered for reappointment.
Madam Mayor, I move to reappoint.
Okay. Seconded by Councilor Stewart. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk.
Thank you. The next item is the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. The term of Claudia Jones Graham is expiring, and she does not wish to be considered for reappointment. And I sent you earlier today, I believe it was, some information from the SMAC committee on their makeup. And if you recall, earlier this year, I think it was, you came up with some guidelines as to categories you'd like to fill. So I know you probably hadn't had time to read all of that and look at the categories, but you do have one vacancy, and I think I'm doing this from memory, it is in land planning or land conservation, architectural type thing, the category that you would need to nominate to be true to your standards for appointments.
We also have a need for diversity. This was the only African-American woman serving on this commission, so would like for us to really do our due diligence and reach out to the community.
Okay, the next item is the Civil Service Commission. The term of Philip Rubin is expiring. He is eligible and would like to be considered for reappointment.
Make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Mayor Pro Tem Branch has seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Clerk, that was unanimous.
Thank you, and that's all I have, and look forward to Cassidy sending you a ballot on Friday.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have the report and recommendation of the city clerk. It's minutes from our last meeting.
Move for approval.
Do we have a second? Councilor Stewart has seconded. All in favor? Any opposition? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. And then we have the report and recommendation of the city attorney.
I have no report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have a motion here to enter into closed session. We'll take a recess of 5 minutes. And here's the motion. The city council will continue the search process for the city manager position today and by virtual meeting on Friday, October 23rd and Saturday, October 24th. The process will be conducted in closed session today in a continuation of today's meeting, which we recess from today's closed session until Friday, October 23rd, and recess from Friday's closed session until Saturday, October 24th. This meeting will be adjourned from closed session on October 24th. A motion is in order to enter closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11A1 and GS 143-318.11A3 to consult with the city attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. GS 143-318.11A6 to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer, employee, or prospective public officer or employee. Would you like me to say that again? No. Councilor Stewart, thank you for seconding that. All in favor? Okay, thank you. We will take a 5-minute break and then join back in closed session.